home quarter-final. It's going to be an Irish interprovincial derby match against Ulster rather than facing Toulouse for a third time. Your thoughts on that?
It's a good while away at this stage. There's got a lot of rugby between now and then, so we'll focus on the week to week. We've got a Six Nations break coming up for the non-international, so but yeah, as I say, it's a long way away, so we'll focus on the footy between now and then.
Not giving anything away there. Jameson Gibson Park. Would you prefer Toulouse or Ulster? I think they would prefer Ulster, right?
Definitely, yeah. I think that's and I sense that Toulouse wouldn't want Leinster either, so they're staying in France. But it's incredible for Ulster, I think. Look, we've got to give them massive credit. When you think the way Racing beat him so dominantly in round 2, that they've won 5 of the 6 games, so Dan McFarlane's done a really good job there. And even though they were woeful for 50 minutes against Leicester on Saturday, John Cooney coming on, I think Ian Henderson being back was really significant for them. He's recovered from the thumb injury. The thumb injury, I should say, not the thumb injury. The thumb injury. That's the Tipperary way of saying it. He's been out for he was man of the match, and they're saying he recovered 7 weeks earlier. I think the prognosis they gave her, the time frame was much longer. You don't suddenly recover.
Oh, he's going to miss the
He's
Six
recovered
Nations.
a couple of weeks. You can definitely knock 2 or 3 weeks off an injury like that, but not 7. But he was brilliant, and I think it's in real contrast to what's happening with England now. When you've Owen Farrell out injured, Brad Shields is injured, Joe Launchbury's injured. For the Irish provinces, winning 4 out of 4 and having the likes of Henderson back, Johnny Sexton's back training,
being able to
a lot of it is positive.
Being able to take Conor Murray off with the game in the balance.
He got a bit of a shoulder knock, but it's all positive for the Irish province when it comes to the injuries. And Eddie Jones
having his minutes managed, or was that like he had to come off?
No, I think it was. Matheson is a very good player. I think the game it was stagnating a little bit, and he brings real energy, Matheson, and he's a quality player coming on. So I think it was just a change of tactic, really, and I think they wanted something different, and he offers that little bit of threat.
Is Ty Byrne okay, or do we know what the story is?
Yeah, I met him after the game. It's obviously you can't diaggnose. It looks like a medial ligament injury, and
he's trying to run it off.
Knee.
I mean,
he's trying to run it off, which is a good sign that you're not gone to the extent that it's really serious and you're not getting stretchered off. But he was in a brace after the game, walked out with his Man of the Match award. So he obviously has an injury and definitely strained his ligaments. But I think, like I said, there's no major significant injuries for Ireland, and a lot of positive stories coming out.
It's mad, really, that we come off the back of this weekend and Ian Henderson and Ty Byrne both put down man of the match performances, and chances are they won't start for Ireland. Yeah,
they won't either. I think Toner and James Ryan will start, and they're the incumbent ones. They're the ones who have the jersey, and I think it just goes to show. But it gives a lot of options for who's going to be on the bench and how they'll manage that. And honestly, I think back a couple of years ago when O'Connell retired and Donegal Callan retired, and they were there for so long. Who were the next? Mallow Kelly retired. There's a lot of quality finished there, and we were talking about having problems in the second round. There's great depth there now, which is incredible.
Was Saturday one of the most intense spectating experiences you ever had at Thomond Park?
Yeah, it was right up there with any of the big ones. There's a lot of big ones over the years. I think for Munster to get into an 18 quarter final is a phenomenal return, to be fair to them. They were sloppy. There was a great atmosphere there, and I think everybody sensed, and even meeting people before the game, they sensed that Exeter would come and cause problems. There's often been matches there where, round 6 Munster, you talk about the danger and the threats and of the team coming, but realistically, if Munster turn up, they'll win and they'll blow them away. There was a certain amount of concern about
Mike Haley's mum. So mum and dad came to the first at Munster rugby game yesterday at Thomond. Unfortunately, mum ended up getting too nervous. Spent the last 10 minutes of the game hiding in the toilets, covering her ears.
It was like the intensity was incredible there, but I think Exeter, to be fair to them, they brought a real kind of steel about them, and they're a quality side. They didn't show it in the early rounds of the Champions Cup pool games, but they've shown what they can do and what they've done in the Premiership. They beat Saracens a couple of weeks ago there in Exeter, and they're a quality side. There's 6 or 7 of them in the English squad, and a little bit of pressure off them because people, they weren't expected to get the win and make the knockout stages. Whatever about beating Munster there, denying them the losing bonus point and stuff was a tall order, given Munster's recent form and the way they played in Gloucester last week. So it was a nervy kind of performance and unbelievably compelling because the hits and the intensity were phenomenal. It was full-blooded. I think Jerome Garces didn't referee the game for both sides, and there was a lot of offsides and there was a lot of illegal stuff going on from both sides. But it was intense, I tell you, and they're relieved at the end. There was a lot of relief there.
They didn't quite play to the level that they're capable of. There was a weird bit.
Well, they had 11 turnovers or handling errors, which is, if you're up in double figures in handling errors, it's a lot in rugby, and that kind of tells its own tale. I think Exeter had 60% possession.
Yeah, what do you put that down?
Dominant team usually are Munster at home, where they squeeze teams out, and even if they're not playing free-flowing rugby, they usually hold on to the ball well. And it's the same in soccer, isn't it? Possession is 9/10 of the law,
Yeah.
If you have the ball and keep hold of it, the opposition can. And particularly at home, that's exactly what you want to do. People often ask me, what's the difference between home and away? Well, at home, you have familiarity, you have the crowd, you feel a different sort of energy, you set a tempo, all that kind of stuff. The opposition are travelling, they're coming into a bit of a cauldron, but Exeter just kind of held on to the ball for long periods of the game, and when Munster then tried to build some sort of sustainable pressure, they turned the ball over. Even in the second half, when you felt, look, this is going to turn around a bit, Munster are going to get their purple patch and their dominant patch. And
was that conditions, Alan? No, I didn't say there was that conditions.
It was pressure from the opposition.
Not in terms
massive
of slippery.
Pressure. Not really, no. Munster were a little bit sloppy themselves. And you sense that they were kind of waiting for someone to do something, and that they maybe expected this is going to turn, this is going to change. And they just, to be fair, Exeter were unbelievably abrasive, aggressive, in your face, frustrating team to play against, very powerful. And they kind of upset Munster a little bit, and uncharacteristically, they didn't have any kind of control of the tempo of the game.
So if you're Van Gran and the rest of the coaching staff this week, what are the things you're doing to make sure that this is something that the team, the next time they're faced with a scenario like this, they do assert their game?
Well, I think what you would do is you'd look at their first and second and maybe third phase plays and be way more efficient, because a lot of stuff broke down after maybe one or two phases. They had issues with the line speed of Exeter, so they tried to kind of move it a little bit, and Carty had that kind of energy to try and move the ball and ambition, but they were just coming up with this umbrella defence and just turning Munster back inside and just shooting off the line. And so I think managing the game better, certainly their first strike from phase play, they need to be a lot more accurate around the breakdown, and maybe send in one or two more numbers. And then their management, where they play the game. They probably overplayed a little bit and tried to overplay a little bit at times where they should have looked for a little bit. And their kicking game was poor. So honestly, when you go back and look at the reviews, some of these games, they'll learn a lot from it. And the big positive is you'll take the character and the fight and the energy. But honestly, it's not me giving the kind of speak and Van Gran giving it afterwards that they were a good side. They're a hell of a good side.
Exeter.
And they're a physical side, Ger. I'll tell you, honestly, you would be incredibly, to be up close to some of the hits and the intensity and the energy that they were putting into the game was phenomenal.
One last point, were Exeter a little bit brain dead?
Absolutely.
Kicking for the corner instead of taking the points?
I think they should have taken their points and tried to do 3-6-9 scenario rather than going, we've got to get 7 points, we've got to go 7 ahead of Munster here, and deny them a losing bonus point. Get it to 4 or 5 and then maybe hope towards the end of it you can maybe force a drop goal and make Munster panic a little bit.
Yeah, make Munster chase the game. So Munster needed to at least get a losing bonus point to go through, which is a weird situation for them to be in.
It was, yeah, and maybe that affected them. A lot of these round 5 and 6 games for Munster in the past number of years is games they've had to go for.
Yeah.
They've had to go for. And now, to be fair to them, I thought the way they started the game in the first 10 or 15 minutes, there was a real aggression, there was a real, right, we know you're going to bring fire, but we're going to match it, and this is Thomond Park. And in fairness, their application and their effort levels were brilliant, and their desire. But they just, for some reason, there was a sense of panic started to kind of creep across the board, and they just dropped balls, they lost balls in contact. There was, you know, a lot of it is down to Exeter's credit, but Munster needed to be a lot more efficient with the ball, and they just turned it over. And normally you associate Munster with building 10, 12, 15, 20 phases and wearing teams down. They got to 4 or 5, I'd say, max on Saturday, which is easy to defend. And then at times you saw Exeter jumping around when they turned the ball over. They got lifts from that at big times in the game. But they did show incredible resilience and character, and they're on the back of a really good run. So this is another win, and that was probably the most important thing as they went off the field. We won the game playing poorly against a very good side who stopped us and frustrated us. And but they didn't have any line breaks, and that's where Exeter didn't capitalise on that possession they had and didn't take their scores, you know, when as you said.
Sorry, Jan, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in the paper this morning, Billy Keane is saying that he heard someone behind the press box describe Billy Holland as a bashed when he made that line-out steal near the end, which I presume is as big a compliment as you can get from a Munster perspective. How big a risk was that move on the line-out from Munster?
Well, you just sensed that there was a bit of inevitability about maybe what Exeter were going to do here if they won the line-out, because their maul had been strong. Armand scored the first one. Their body language going up to that line was, we're going to get over here and this is going to be devastation, and you're waiting for that eerie silence to come. And then they'd won a few to the tail, and I think Billy is very intelligent and he's a really good line-out operator, and his impact over in Gloucester was brilliant as well when he came on for Peter O'Mahony, to be able to bring on a bit of experience like that. And he's the one who's putting pressure on Stander and Lockman to get him up there. And to be fair to Stander, he turns and throws him up. It was a really, really crucial part. And it was game-changing for them to win that line-out. So his impact was massive in the last couple of weeks.
Just a quick one, bit of a throwaway. You mentioned it earlier about potentially the semi-final game at Páirc Uí Chaoimh as opposed to Thomond Park.
Yeah,
I know it's a little bit down the road, but how would the players potentially feel about that?
They'd love it. They'd love it. It was mentioned last week as a possibility, because obviously these things have to be sounded out. So I think there has been a bit of sounding out, which won't go public. But Saracens and Glasgow play in London, and Edinburgh play Munster in Edinburgh. Saracens obviously finished 1 in the seedings. Glasgow finished 7th or 8th. They finished 8th. If Glasgow were to beat Saracens, which is unlikely, but they're a dangerous side, and Munster were to beat Edinburgh, that would be the case, that they'd go to Páirc Uí Chaoimh.
Well, you've spoken about the Thomond factor. I know in terms of the lads, you say it'd be great to go there, but really...
Neutral venue for semi, though. It can be in the home country, but it has to be a neutral venue. Yeah. So I think going to Cork would be, look, it may not, it's highly unlikely that it'll happen, but what is Páirc Uí Chaoimh, 45? 50,000, is it?
40 something,
it'd be incredible.
Kenny's played there.
He's played there in the...
But you know, funny enough, I was down there for Liam's benefit for game, and I do remember we're walking around the pitch after the game. I do remember thinking, wow, you get well, we're talking actually about, would you ever see an Irish football game down? I was saying, you know, I'd love to see a really important...
The terracing is quite close, isn't it?
And just the way it's shaped.
Yeah.
I just thought, you know, the noise in here would be absolutely phenomenal, just the way the stands are actually shaped. So whether it's a football game or potentially more likely a rugby game.
Well, it's for that case, that scenario to happen, you have 2 results there. Munster, in fairness, and I know it'll be put to bed for 8-10 weeks, but Edinburgh, Jesus, they're a really, really dangerous side, and I think Richard Cockerell he'll be loving the fact that now it's Munster.
Yeah.
Because he'll know that'll really focus his team. They lost the semi-final last year in Thomond Park in the Pro 14, a game that they could have won, and they caused Munster problems. So he'll be loving that scenario, Richard Cockerell.
Is Páirc Uí Chaoimh, would it be available? Would it be open?
I don't know for certain, but there's talk. Derek Foley's talking about in the Star. I think it has been mentioned, and a few people mentioned on Saturday.
Okay with it? Is that?
Well, that's the big question.
That's what I'm asking.
Has
anybody asked?
We've never had any issue with Páirc Uí Chaoimh before.
I mean, we've got to get away from that, haven't we? We've got to park that one, haven't we? I know it was kind of an issue for a small period of time.
For Munster people, if it did happen, it would mean either coming to Dublin or going to Cork, and you know, you're home in Cork, and all the Cork rugby people, I think there'd be a massive furore about it again, and the poor GA would be probably bullied into a corner again, but that scenario may not happen, and it's unlikely.
A bit like rented out.
Yeah.
GA will make a fairly healthy
Yeah,
profit
they
off it.
would. Yeah, but
Everybody's a winner
let's
there.
wait
I
and
don't
see.
think
Yeah,
anybody
yeah, it
suffers
would
there,
be.
really,
It would
do
be.
they?
You know. So it's anyway. Thankfully,
Tickets, Alan. Are we?
no problem. Kenny.
Whoa! Here we
Forget the
go. Here
cough,
we
we'll
go.
have no problem. We'll wait and see.
Gotta go
Not you, me.
You got to go and support Glasgow now with the Saracens. That's your next step, Kenny, to get on this.
Let's talk about the Leinster game. Again, a kind of weird situation where they know exactly what's going to happen. It's impossible for them to finish first or second by the time the game kicks off. So it's a bonus point that they need. And like they played really well in patches, and then kind of went to sleep for 20 minutes, and Wasps score a little bit, but it was never in doubt.
Never in doubt, and I think they were really efficient, and they brought a fair bit of intensity and pace to their game early on, and that just kind of blew Wasps away. 20 points to nil at half time away from home. You just think this is Leinster, and Wasps are just, their body language is really poor. Their enthusiasm for gathering high balls, the box kicking from Gibson Park was brilliant, and just their overall control and management of the game was really, really, really efficient. And they didn't really have to get out of third gear, and they were still 20 points up. Wasps have been dreadful in the competition, and Di Young after the game has kind of been sarcastic and condescending, saying, you know, poor Leinster, and you'd have to feel sorry for him. Jack Conan pulls out and they can bring in someone like Sean O'Brien. He's given out about salary caps last week. It needs to be increased. Like, he needs to look at his own team and look at his own depth and quality that they're bringing through. And Leinster have been the best team in Europe for winning it last year, and they dismantled Wasps in round one. And that was the game that sent out a message that they had that hunger and desire. Losing to Toulouse away is going to cost them probably a home semi-final, which makes it trickier, particularly when you're going to France like that. So they'll have to go the harder way if they want to retain the title, but they were very, very dominant yesterday. I know they conceded the 3 tries in the second half, but to be honest, they were never in doubt of Wasps getting back into that. It was a very dominant Leinster performance.
Are the Di Young comments, I wonder, indicative of a general English tone, English club tone, I should say?
They're looking for excuses, and they're looking to blame people, and they're looking to be condescending towards the Irish players, saying that, well, they're rested before, there's no relegation to Pro 14, and they get rested and managed and all this stuff. They never seem to mention how good the players are. They're looking for reasons of our players are tired and we don't have enough depth. They have a bigger budget than Leinster Wasps, so why don't they have enough players? Where are the academy players? England have, I think they've won 3 or 4 of the last under-20 championships. Where are all these players coming through? They've contested, I think, 8 of the last 11 finals in the under-20s. I did a piece on it Saturday, and where are all these young players coming through? And you look at Leinster, the amount of young players that they've brought through, the amount of Leinster players there's a couple in Munster, there's a few in Munster, there's 4 or 5 in Ulster as well, there's a number in Connacht. There's a conveyor belt of young Leinster players who are having an impact in all the provinces, and where are the young English players that are going to grab hold of at 19, 20, and you go, wow, these guys are going to go on and play for England very quickly, and they're not producing that. So they're trying to sign overseas players, and then they're making excuses that, well, we lose against the Irish provinces because they rest their players. It's nothing to do with, you never hear them saying because they've outstanding quality and they've outstanding development, and they've completely turned the tables from 2015-16 season when Leinster won 1 game in 6. Munster didn't qualify, Ulster didn't qualify. The last 3 years there's been a massive focus from all the provinces, and the pathway here for young players to get a chance and get an opportunity has made a real difference with the provinces. So I'm kind of sick of listening to them saying, it's because we've a way smaller playing pool than England. They have the biggest playing pool in the world, and all they do is say, well, it's because Ireland rest players. It's because Ireland rest players. It's because Ireland have good players. I never hear him saying that. I never hear him saying the development, the pathways, and they beat, more often than not, they beat our under-20 side. So it's not as if we've been dominating in under-20s and winning championships for the last 10 years. We haven't. We've a lot of good young players. But you go back to that, I think it was the 2016 under-20 final.
Got hockeyed.
Well, we're beaten, well beaten by a very powerful English side. But Jacob Stockdale played that day. James Ryan, and
Deegan.
Andrew Porter, Max Deegan. But the three, James Ryan, Porter, and Stockdale have up on 30, 35 international caps between them now. Stockdale has been touted as probably one of the best wingers in the world.
Yeah.
James Ryan is
It's because he's rested, Alan.
Yeah, because he's rested.
He's got his leg smashed.
James Ryan is, in my opinion, right up there with the best second row in the world. And like, this is something you expect from English teams, that these 19, 20-year-olds are going to come through and they're superstars, and the guys up in Newcastle and down in London and it's just our systems. It's not luck either. It's nothing to do with resting players. And for Dai Young to start saying, he's had a lot of injuries, in fairness, and the Premiership, there is a fair intensity to it. So they have some mitigating factors there, that there is a fair intensity to the Premiership, and it's a kind of a must-win every week for financial reasons and everything. But it's just too much listening to them saying, oh, it's because they rest players.
It's great listening to it, though, isn't it? That constant kind of whinging, you take it as a compliment.
But Saracens, Kenny, are a team in London who have had a lot of recruitment over the years, overseas recruitment, but they've put a massive emphasis under Mark McCall to develop their academy as well,
right,
and have some sustainability. Their academy has been very productive for them, and is very productive. So academy is the way forward, and sometimes,
especially in professional situations in England, where you can
happen, though.
You can literally handpick the best teenagers from around the country. But for the current coach for any team, Jerry, it's kind of like Premiership soccer. It's about winning the match on Saturday. It's not about, Jesus, I have to look after the academy as well. It's about, how am I going to get a team in the field as quickly as possible? And there is pressure there. I just want to talk a bit about Jack Carty, a brilliant intercept try at the weekend for Connacht. Andy Friend tweeted afterwards, "A moment to savour, well done at Jack Carty 10. Looking forward to taking on Sale in the ECC quarter-final in late March. Focus now switches back to Pro 14 with Cardiff Blues is coming Saturday, another huge challenge for us." It means nothing, but he's on Twitter and it's great.
I find it very strange that the head coach is tweeting one of the players to say, well done. To be fair, it's a change in modern times. I can't imagine Tony McGahan or Declan Kidney sending a tweet saying, well done, Quinny, great performance on Saturday. Well, in case I was shocking the next week. Right. And then I'm saying, you were my friend last Saturday and you're telling the world I'm great, and now you're dropping me. So it is a kind of a change in tact, really, isn't it? But look, it's refreshing to see. Andy Friend seems to be very open, kind of enthusiastic.
It's a positive, though, isn't it?
It's a lovely positive message. Yeah, I'm not saying it's a negative thing.
No, I
understand
kind of totally what you're saying, but
he was great, Jack Carty, again, and maybe he's kind of answered a few calls, and maybe Joe Schmidt has given him that bit of confidence now by picking him in the squad, and Ross Byrne obviously be frustrated that he wasn't named last week.
Yeah.
Maybe Jack Carty's just the better out half, but more prepared to step into the Six Nations now. I get the theory that in terms of mind games, it works perfectly from Joe Schmidt's perspective to leave Ross Byrne out, and maybe it'll give him an option later on in the year. Or maybe Jack Carty just...
Ian Henderson talking about mind games. He said it after the game. Joe, like, they don't know. Some of them didn't even know whether they were going to Portugal on Saturday.
Right.
At that stage. So they're travelling Monday, and some of them didn't even know if they were going to travel. Even guys named in the squad, because some of them will be released back to playing for Pro 14 this weekend. And that Joe plays mind games, not just with the press, but with the players. So it is a scenario. Ross Byrne will be training with the squad throughout the Six Nations.
Okay, so the squad going to the Algarve is the same squad that was named last week, though, right?
Yeah, but they may not all go, because some of them will need matches. Well, does Sean O'Brien stay at home and play a game? It's his first game back. Does he need another game?
Not according to Owen, about an hour and a half.
No,
it's not a factor. Yeah. Match fitness is not a factor, according to Owen. Just straight in the team. End of.
Straight off. Well,
for Robbie Henshaw, he's putting Robbie Henshaw straight in the team.
Well, he looked very sharp yesterday. You know, he was.
I think you bring O'Brien, don't you, to the Algarve and go, like, you just need to be back in the squad and. No.
But some players are different. Alan says it there. They're different beasts.
I'd rather play.
Would you?
I'd rather.
How long has he been out? How long has he been out?
12 weeks. They've both been out 12 weeks. Yeah.
Both been out for 12 weeks, and they played 55, 60 minutes yesterday. And to be fair to them, both of them were really good.
Yeah.
You need another game. I think you need another game. You need to. And now, is it a risk that, God, they might get a bang or a knock? But you've got to take that chance. I think you need another game. You need to get that rustiness out of the system. Maybe 40, 50 minutes again. Maybe they sit in the bench and come on for the last 25, 30. Maybe they need to be out doing the warm-up and that whole game preparation stuff again, because it's a mental thing as well. I don't know. maybe they'll go to the Algarve and there'll be some of the injured guys who are lacking a bit of match fitness will be taken aside and do some rugby fitness and kind of rugby conditioning, which sometimes is a little surge that some of them need just to be ready for the game.
Did Sean O'Brien play his way onto the bench at least for the Six Nations? That he's back now and he played 8, so therefore...
His enthusiasm was there and he made a lot of good carries, and fairness, a lot of good tackles. But it's hard when you're initially named at the bench and shortly before kickoff, then you're starting. It's a different scenario. But look, he wants to get back, and the guy deserves a break. He deserves a little bit of luck now. He's world-class player when he's fit.
But Van der Fleer's
well.
the 7 for Ireland at the moment, right?
Yeah. It depends now how, and a lot of this will depend on how, if he goes to the Algarve, how he trains this week.
Yeah.
So if Sean O'Brien is sharp in training, Joe puts a lot of value in that as well, because his training sessions are short but highly intensive. Or does he play on the weekend? How does he play at the weekend? So does he need more minutes? So could well be on the bench, because someone like Sean O'Brien having his kind of experience and temperament around for that.
You think that's a factor, regardless, even on the bench, even having him in the dressing room, even having him around the group on the day leading up to the game, the day of the game, around the presence, like
he's a hard bastard, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's hard and he speaks and he's vocal and he's been through a lot. He was, but then in saying that, there's other guys here who are in top form at the moment as well, so he's a fair few conundrums there, selection conundrums.
All right, we'll get to go through them over the next 10 days or so. We will be talking about England and the Eddie Jones comments tomorrow. We'll get the view from England about his trolling. It's kind of boring trolling at this stage because he's not very good at it. It's like, oh, you're having to go with Sexton again.
At this stage,
it's not boring.
No, that wasn't. I didn't. That wasn't that quote you read about Sexton. It was actually very complimentary.
Got the bat phone.
But at the same time, obviously, he was putting it out there a little bit.
Influence the referees, and he's been known to go to referees' meetings, which they take in some of the coaches and go, right, the refs are going to do this, this, and this for November, and then he goes a week later, what was the point in going to that meeting? Nothing has happened, So he's always playing those mind games with the refs, with players, with other coaches. Initially, I used to go, well, this is quite insulting, but now I think it's just humorous.
I wouldn't put too much stock
He's actually a good bloke, to be honest.
Into it. Yeah.
He's funny.
I thought he was actually quite respectful towards Johnny Sexton there. I thought he paid him a big compliment. While at the same time getting his message out there.
Exactly.
At the same time.
He's playing both sides. You're hook, line and sinker, Kenny, you fell for it.